what I've always tried to do is not worry about the destination, is worry about where I am right now and do I love what I'm doing and is it a lot of fun? Am I finding it fulfilling? That's what matters the most. The rest will sort itself out. It's really hard, I think certainly when you're younger to trust the process, if you will, or trust the journey. But I really believe if you love the journey, the rest, success, will find you.
I'm Jenny. I'm the founder at Wander. We are a UX design and user research company. What's really near and dear to my heart is education. And so we started this podcast as a way to share knowledge to the community. Our mission statement at Wander is experience, educate, and grow, meaning to grow as a person, both professionally and personally. We have to expand our human experiences as much as possible. And from what we've learned, get back to the community by educating about what we've experienced. So this is what the podcast is all about. So yeah, I'm really excited to learn from you today.
Okay, well, hopefully there's something in there. It's certainly been a circuitous and rather interesting route over the years, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at your profile. I tried to do some research online. There wasn't too much to find, but just based on your
Good.
LinkedIn profile, I'm interested in diving in and learning more about your career. And I guess to start off, I'm curious, like, what has been like the biggest influence for you in your life and how it shaped your career path?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I have to do the old tried and true and go back to my dad and my parents in general. They really kind of pushed me to do whatever I was interested in, to kind of go explore stuff and not to worry about, a destination, just to kind of focus on what's in front of you. So technology and things like that have always interested me, but the law actually also did as well. So I like to say I just missed becoming an attorney, but I decided to explore the technology side coming out of college for a year, just for a year, until I go to law school the year after that. And well, I'm still kind of here. So it's, I like to say in a lot of ways, I'm kind of consider myself an accidental technologist because this is not where I was aiming to be. It's just where I wound up because it's just, I love exploring a lot of different things, staying curious.
Yeah, that's a very long 30-year accident that has bloomed out
Yeah,
of uh
it's so let's go. It's the ongoing accident. It hasn't ended yet.
that's how I feel about Wander as well. When I first started, it was like I got out of grad school and I wanted to just explore and travel. And I was like, well, what did I do? Like freelance UX design. That's how it bloomed into what it is today. So,
Yep.
so law school, you were going to be a lawyer. How did you fall into technology?
Yeah, so I've been involved with technology since I was very young. 1978 is when I got my first machine and started coding and mostly playing video games, but a little coding here and there. And it just really intrigued me, right? This is back in the dawn of the microcomputer. It's like everything was new, everything was greenfield. Nobody had really done anything before. And just exploring and unlocking what you could accomplish was just so much fun that I just kind of kept doing it through high school and et cetera. And it wasn't until I got to college they said, okay, it's time to get serious. Really, law is the other thing. It's interesting. That's a real career. This playing with technology is not a real career, not in the '80s anyway. And so I basically, went through college preparing. I'm a history major and preparing for law school, and just said when I graduated, I'm going to take a year because we have to take a breath, take a year, and then go play and do something fun and then go get serious about it. And that's kind of how I wound up here. I was very fortunate. That was in 1992, right? Is it all started getting very serious and very big. And so I just kind of rode that wave, right? That started from really computers going everywhere to this little thing called the internet, then to mobile, and just, I got to ride a lot of those crests. So just a lot of fun. And now AI and IoT and all the crazy things going on.
Yeah, and I think that's so important as a career path to be able to like play in whatever you do. Like so many
Yeah.
people just kind of get lost in like, oh, this pays the bill, or like, oh, this is a great opportunity, but they're not actually passionate about their job. So I think it's so admirable that even after 30 years, you're still playing. So I'd love to hear what does your day-to-day play look like?
Um, that's really interesting. So I work New York hours, East Coast hours. So the day usually starts around 6, no later than 7. And it's all the things right now, certainly in my current position, it's all the things that you really love doing. There's a lot of inventing. There's a lot of, hey, there are really hard problems here. How can we solve them ways that haven't been solved before to kind of unlock capabilities that are just not possible today? And so doing new stuff is very centered to that. And like the rest of my career, it's all stuff that focuses directly on humans. It touches people directly. It's not, an abstract system kind of things. These are all things that get directly in front of real users and have real meaning to them. And so that's the other piece of it. That just keeps it fun, right? I've been very lucky that, I've never really worked the old phrase, I've never worked a day in my life because I really enjoy and love what I do. And that's always been how I've selected for positions that I'm curious in. And that's kind of how, I've always selected people to work with is everybody's just really super curious and just super like, I don't know if we can do that, but let's try.
Yeah, and I can sense it in your energy too. A lot of people sometimes might have like a lower energy to them, but right off the bat, you're coming into the podcast and like, all right, cool. I like Sla's energy.
Thank you. It is something I'm known for within the team is being a little enthusiastic, particularly about stuff that's really just exciting. When most of it's
Yeah,
exciting, you just get a label.
I love that. And so challenges and excitement, like what does that look like for you now? Because you mentioned that you like working on the challenges that you have. So give us a little more insight to what that is.
So, all right. So challenges that we're really looking at, today that are interesting is if you think if you think about how people live, and apartments is an obvious candidate to talk about, it's a pretty lonely and isolated experience. And wouldn't it be better if your neighbors around you, there's some community commerce, and you had a sort of connection to the place that you're living, that you call home? And so that's kind of really a primary thing that we're looking at is not technology first, but how can technology enable that and make it better for humans? And, sit quietly in the background and unlock a lot of that kind of capability set. And so that's the hard part, right? That really, from my point of view anyway, really hasn't been done all that successfully. And so it's a really fun problem to go tackle.
Yeah, and walk me through the process of that a little bit because I think a
Mhm.
lot of people who are in innovation, they're always looking at the idea and the technology first, like how do we build this and then have people adapt to it versus having an
Oh
idea
no,
about like what if we can't talk about it?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
That's just not the process here. This is not hey, we have this purity of thought, and then we're
yeah,
going to figure out how do we bring people to our purity of thought.
yeah.
There are certainly things that work that way. The iPhone, very much a purity of thought exercise, and obviously a phenomenally successful one. But
Yeah.
this is looking at it the other way around. This is looking at it, what are the systemic or endemic problems that people are experiencing in this environment? What isn't working for them? And then how do we fix it? Not how does technology fix it? What's fundamental broken? What's the first principle failure? That's a phrase. What's the first principle failures that are causing this negative outcome? And then how can technology, lower those or make them better or even contribute to the fix, but not be the fix? Because it's such
Absolutely.
a human centric place. You can't try to change the human. That's the wrong approach. You just have to make it better for the human the way that they are. Meet them where they are.
Yeah. And I'm
And
sure
that's
like living
that's
in
true of almost
Silicon,
anything.
yeah. And I'm sure living in Silicon Valley, you see that all the time where you have new founders coming up with all sorts of crazy innovative ideas and then they just lose at the adaptation of the technology.
Yeah. It's really easy, and I hate to go back to Steve, but Steve Jobs was right on this front. Yes is easy. It's really easy to say, boy, that's really cool, or boy, that's really innovative, or boy, that was a really hard technical solution to come up with, but it's hard to see how that matters in the broad scheme, or how it would fit into the way people function. No is much harder. It's much harder to say, yeah, all those things, brilliant, exciting, etc. But no, because it's just not the right thing to do now, or it doesn't, whatever a credible reason is, understanding how it resonates. And I've always tried to, bring that philosophy to how I approach things. It's easy to say yes. It's hard to say no, particularly say no to the right things, and keep the focus, and keep, driving towards that what matters versus that which is exciting, because exciting doesn't always matter.
Absolutely. That's like with anything in life. It's always so hard to say
Yeah.
no. And, people overwhelm themselves by just saying, like, yes, that's cool, and adding more things onto their plate. And you kind of wonder why, in the grand scheme of things, why there's so many people who are lonely and miserable. And it's like, okay, well, what are you actually saying yes to, and what do you say no to? Because a lot of times you're probably saying
Yeah.
yes to things that excite you at the moment, as you said, or saying yes because someone asked, and then you're not really left with much passionate things on your plate.
Yep. No, I completely agree. It's easy to forget the human in the equation. And, at least for now anyway, humans are still pretty center to the equation.
Till AI takes over.
Exactly. And I hope that doesn't happen. I think there's a lot of good that AI can do.
Yeah, yeah. So what does that, human-centric experience look like at Flow? And again, I'm going to be a little bit mindful because you mentioned it's not public yet. So what can you share
Hmm.
about how you guys approach human-centric design, or how you approach technology from that perspective? And just to, brief everybody, like, the challenge you guys are trying to tackle here is that there are people who are paying way too much in rental costs, and that um, as individuals too, that there's a crisis about like being alone and not having community in where they're living.
Yeah, I posted this on LinkedIn too, my thoughts on this particular piece. There are, what I can say is, I don't think anybody would disagree that there are fundamental problems in, well, let's just say housing, in the world. Forget just the United States, in the world, but certainly here in the United States as much as anywhere else. And that, this is not going to be a better app that solves it. It's not going to be, AI coming in and replacing all the people that run the building, or whatever it is. I'm completely making that up. It's going to be that technology enables the actual real humans, those that live in the building, and those that, support them, their neighbors, and the great hosts that help run the building, and etc., to form better connections with each other, but not as the thing, but as the thing that just helps that happen. And that's, I think that's really exciting, and driving things like community commerce, so that it's easy for residents in the building to offer services, or to interact with each other, and to be a mutually beneficial interaction. And so there's just lots of stuff there. Um, Now, edit for a minute, just thinking, it's the challenge here, right, is that there's a ton of there are a ton of try this. There are a ton of really big problems. The center of all those problems is the center of the solution to all those problems is people, because they're fundamentally people relationships, people problems. And, technology today cannot help solve that. It's working and getting better, but I think we see an opportunity for it to do a whole lot more through things like community commerce and connectivity and connection, and, respecting privacy, doing those kinds of things.
Yeah, and so at the core, as you said, it's people. But living in a world where everyone's so disconnected, how do you build that community, at least from your perspective? Like, what is community? How do you connect people?
Um, yeah, that's this Jen is one I can't get into. This is part of the thing that's not public yet.
Gotcha. So outside of the technology aspect and outside of Flow, like just from your personal perspective, how do you connect people?
Yeah. So that is, meeting people where they are, right? Recognizing that everybody comes to that interaction with a history, with a story. They're going through a particular, they have their stuff that's happening to them today. And if you expect them to meet you, you're going to have a difficult connection there. Versus if you are really listening and really paying attention to what's going on and hearing what they're saying, then you have and if both, particularly if both parties are doing that, then you have a significantly better chance of connecting together. Some of the best products that I've worked on, like for example, my time at WhatsApp, that's really one of the things that WhatsApp brings to the world at large. Billions of users sending billions of messages every day because it's a connection, because it actually helps them form and maintain those tight communal and family and personal and et cetera, even business ties. And that's just, I can just say personally, that's a really fun place and a really, I think valuable place, let alone interesting place to be kind of a part of, right? Whether it's, I dabble in photography because it's that same kind of connection, bringing that subject forward and helping people connect with them through the photographs. Or, so whether that connection can be instant message or photograph, or a teacher to a student or a business to a customer, this is something a thread that I've kind of followed through most of my career. And, it's why I say play as much, because it's just something I enjoy so much, which is weird because people would say, fundamentally, I always say I'm an introvert. I actually am an introvert. But I'm a professional extrovert. And so I've figured out how to walk with a foot in each camp.
Yeah. I know that feeling. You kind of like, I don't know if they call it mask, but it's almost like this
No.
like persona when it comes to like professional. And then I know I'm kind of like that where it's like when it comes to professional work, it's like I'm very extroverted. I would like to socialize, but when I'm home, I just want to be alone. I want to like just write in my journal and cut the world out a bit. So yeah, I like that introverted but professionally extroverted.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely the fully hybridized, whatever you want, whatever the modern phrasing is nowadays. Definitely the fully hybridized team. No, it's interesting. So, look, there are multiple, I'm sure there are thousands of books on management philosophies and et cetera. And I go back to, at least my management philosophy is never forgetting that it's about people. And if you keep a people centric approach to how you solve problems and process what's happening, et cetera, it doesn't magically make everything better or easier, but it tends to lead to better outcomes. Because if an organization fundamentally values its people, trusts and understands that, hey, we're all here for the same thing, and we all want to row in the same direction, but maybe we're not because we don't have the context, or someone's confused, or unfortunately maybe you have somebody who just isn't interested in rowing the same direction. That you work at solving that through understanding, meeting them where they are, having the hard conversations that you have to, but always doing it from the front, if you will. Never
Mhm.
ask someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And so
Absolutely.
it's,
But
but
how
it's
do you
leading,
balance
not
that?
managing. I hate
Yeah.
managing.
Saying you
Oh no.
hate managing.
I like that you called it leadership, because I do think that what it's about. Some places it's called manager, or I want to be a manager, and it's how do you manage people and etc. And that's very, to me, is command and control. It destroys the agency and the autonomy of the individual. And if you've hired right, you have people who thirst to go do really big things, and you can't tell someone how to be creative. You got to let them be creative. So you have to lead them forward and support them, not manage them or direct them. Big
Yeah. And I
philosophical bent. I believe culture is the center of an organization. A healthy organization has a really strong culture, and it's well defined, and everybody universally understands it. I try to drive towards cultures that I believe are transparent and trust centered, meaning the ultimate idea of success in an organization for me is when any individual can look at the actions or what's going on and see it and say, wow, I really don't understand why you're doing that, or it doesn't seem to make sense to me, but I'm going to start this thought with, I trust you've thought about it carefully and that you're looking at it and you just have superior context to what I do coming in. And I'm going to seek to learn from you first about how you rose where you were. And because we both are going to trust each other that hey, we're looking to win here. We're looking to row in the same direction. And I just need to understand better. And not always, but most of the time, that really starts the conversation into a positive and kind of keeps it as a learning growth exercise. And usually both or all parties in that kind of an approach come away better, right? The solution comes away better because it benefits from multiple people contributing to it, but without a power dynamic or the Hitler problem, the highest paid person's opinion, winning. And so it just creates a better solution and a much more collaborative environment. And you achieve that through transparency. You achieve that through the open, willing, aggressive sharing of information. I've always believed very much in central sources of truth. So, for example, with Flow in the engineering function, we have one and only one places. All documents, all decisions, everything is cataloged and tracked. So anybody who wants to see it, product, engineering, design, project management, only has one place to go. And they don't have to kind of go searching for it and digging through things. So that's the substrate, right? If you have that, then I think solving the inevitable problems, because there are always problems, becomes much, much simpler to do because you can get through them faster with less ego and with less power dynamic to things. And because everybody's trying to solve the gaps, play their position, but mind the gap. And they recognize the different values that each different perspective brings. Like, a designer and an engineer tend to be some of the more difficult professions to understand one another. And this kind of a substrate really helps them do amazing things, honestly. Absolutely amazing things. Yeah, so this is always an evolving area of thought, I think. They're the obvious things. So I'm going to set all the obvious things aside that you don't share. Personnel data, decisions like that, things of that nature. What you do share are things that will help whomever you're talking with make better decisions, learn more, gain more context, that when you're no longer talking to each other face to face, you can have a higher degree of trust that they'll make even better decisions because they know as much as you know about what's going on. And the danger zone is sharing things that are highly dynamic, right? The decision that hasn't locked yet, or the data that is completely unvalidated and maybe completely wrong, or a guess or a hypothesis, without at least minimally labeling those things as, hey, here's a guess, this is not fact. Or, hey, here's the early data, we haven't sanitized it and checked it for statistical relevance or et cetera. But adding that extra context, and it's usually a sentence or two of context, really kind of makes it safer so that everybody can learn from it and view it appropriately, versus taking all information as the same golden truth kind of level. Adding that contextual richness is important. And then there's just some things that are just too unsettled, too not real yet. So kind of say, okay, it's just not time. There's nothing to learn yet. That's I think that really gets to culture in a lot of ways. So like my time at Apple, when I was at Apple, there wasn't user research forums. There weren't, strong data-driven things. You had a vision, you believed in it, and that's what you did. And you just drove and executed. And you relied on the creativity and the innovation and, the constant feedback to make it better so that when it finally got in users' hands, it would be delightful and interesting. And more times than not, that approach can work. That approach can absolutely work. I think it does. The other side of it is I spent a lot of good, some really amazing years at Netflix. Netflix, probably the most data-driven organization, at least I've ever experienced. Everything is understood. Everything is validated and checked, and you can put hypotheses, hundreds of hypotheses out, and you let the data tell you where you need to go. And then, there's definitely places in between. So I think it gets back to the culture and what kind of an organization are you? If you're fundamentally aiming to do big, things that are different and you trust your internal compass highly, you're not going to make as much data-driven stuff. It's the old saying, right? You don't ask a caveman what color car they want to drive, and because they just don't have the ability to answer the question. And so it's that kind of a thing versus if you're doing something that is can benefit from data, it has the ability to collect it, and it's reasonable or respectable of privacy and individuals' rights and et cetera, then that's a better time to go to lean into the data side. Depends a lot on your product, a lot on what you're trying to do. Both are successful. Both can fail. That's interesting. So Flow has a culture. Trust me. Flow has a very, very well thought out and thought through culture. And the informed by pretty much the experience of everybody in the organization and then, kind of refined and enhanced. So I go back to, I fundamentally believe really successful organizations all have really, really good cultures at their core, and most of them are actually pretty explicit and pretty direct about it. Meaning, it's not something they backed into accidentally, and so that's where that's where it's at, right? If you're looking to build a successful organization, whether it was a startup that I did or you know time at Netflix or Apple or et cetera, they all approach culture differently, but every one of them has a culture. And people, because the value that culture gives you is you don't have to solve by rule, right? You don't have to make all of these rules to prevent the completely innocent mistake level of things. If everybody is kind of attuned to the same cultural principles and the same guiding posts, then they will, most of the time, the high 90s, make the right choice anyway, because the culture is what helps them. They have the context to make the decision that aligns with what the organization sees culturally, because the culture is true to what the organization is. Netflix has said that for years. Other organizations have said it for years. Zappos, Amazon, etc. And in my experience, anyway, it's just absolutely true. And so you focus on your culture first. Rules only were absolutely necessary, and you don't need to do both in depth. My goal, the goal that I had was to be an attorney. If I had stuck to that goal at all costs, so to speak, I would have missed, well, my entire career, which I've really enjoyed very, very much. If, I was a product manager, I worked a little bit in sales and support and things like that. And then I ultimately wound up in engineering, right? If I set goals, okay, I'm a product manager, I want to be a product line manager, I want to be a group manager and a VP of product or et cetera, I would have missed the ability to go do and build some of the most, amazing technical solutions I got to be part of. So it's, focus. What I've always tried to do is not worry about the destination, is worry about where I am right now, and do I love what I'm doing, and it's a lot of fun, and am I finding it fulfilling? And that's what matters the most. The rest will sort itself out, and it's really hard. I think certainly when you're younger, to trust the process, if you will, or trust the journey. But I really believe if you love the journey, the rest, success, will find you. You don't have to go find it. You don't have to worry about where the journey is taking you, because at the end of the day, the journey really is the reward. It's not the destination. If you get there, you can pop your head up. Okay, I got where I was supposed to go. What's going on now? Right? Now what? And it's just different.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's so cliche, but it's like climbing a mountain, right? Like your destination is to get to the top, but if you're not enjoying the moments that you're getting there, then what's the point of going there? It's like, sure, it's a nice view, but the whole point is, who are you with? How are you getting there? Are you actually in the experience of getting to the top?
Yeah. There are so many people, like both of my kids just went to college. And there are so many people that talk about empty nester syndrome and being an empty nest. And, sure, I miss my kids. I love them dearly. They were just such amazing people. But at the same time I'm not like, oh, crud, now what do I do? Right. I mean, being in my kids' lives and being their dad and et cetera was very, very important to me. But I focused on that when I was doing it. And so now that, I have a very different role as their dad, I can embrace that role. And I don't, I miss some of the old stuff, but I'm not rudderless. I'm not trying to figure out, what do I do next? I know what I do. Well, at least I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I might know what I'm doing next week.
What would your kids say about you? Like, what's their perspective, or what is your perspective of what their perspective of you?
Yeah. I think my kids, and they've said this and accused me of this. One is I'm not particularly graceful. I tend to be somewhat clumsy, and so that's always kind of a running joke within the group, is I'm always bruised and battered in some particular way or another. But I think, for them, they would both say that I'm driven, and intense. That's definitely a word that's been used. But at the same time, that I'm always there, right? They know I have their back. They know I'm in their lives to the degree that it makes that they wish me to be in their lives. I'm not inserting myself, nor am I absent either. And that they are, one of the most important things, and that to me. And I think that goes both ways. And as a parent, what more do you need? You want them to be healthy and happy and all that. And at least right now they are. But that's not my job. That's their job now.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful that you're able to be part of their lives and they're allowing you to, yeah, be part of their journey. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of people who, have rifts with their children, with their parents. So I like the perspective that you shared.
Yeah. It's not all been roses and rainbows, but it's, I'm happy with where we wound up. I really am. And I'm just super proud of them. They're both amazing people.
Yeah. So in this part of your life, like what is the journey that you're on? Because you're an empty nester, you've been afloat now for 5, 6 months. So what
Yep.
is this new journey that you're on?
Uh, it's not a new one. It's just another chapter of the same one I've been on for, well, 55, almost 55 years now. Right? There's a professional component to it. And, am I doing what I enjoy, working with people I enjoy, could feel like I'm actually contributing, to pick any dimension you want. I'm contributing in a way that matters to me, and then and having fun, and then personally, moving on through the stages of life and looking at what's coming next with my partner and I, and she and I have been together for quite a while now, and just are we enjoying where we are. She just recently graduated empty nest as well, and so we're now kind of looking through and saying, hey, what about this trip, or what about this opportunity, or et cetera, and worrying about it, maybe a month, maybe a couple months out, but not multiple years out.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's really beautiful, and my impression of you is that you do stay you stay very present to what you're doing. So yeah, so far I'm enjoying what you've shared. So
I try. I think, yeah, look, I'm an engineer kind of by blood, if not by training. And I can definitely pull in and go nerd on a problem for a couple of days straight. But you miss out if you do that. If that's all that you do. That's fulfilling. It's, as an introvert, it's recharging. And so I don't want to say that's a bad thing. It's a great thing. But
yeah,
like all great things, it needs to be done in moderation. You need to be as well-rounded as you can.
yeah. So outside of family and work, do you have any interesting like nerdy hobbies or anything like that, or what do you nerd out on?
What do I truly nerd out on? A couple a couple things. So photography and visual things. I was very fortunate. I picked up an Apple Vision Pro, and I've been playing with spatial video and 3D, building 3D environments in code, and how does that all fuse together, and just nerding out big time there. Because of my history and having been in the industry for a while, I'd like to say 40 plus years. I'm a retro computing enthusiast, so I have a PyDP 11, which is a PDP 11 simulator. I have play in a lot of the PD. Yeah, a PDP 11 is it's the first computer I ever used. It's a 1970s mini computer. And then someone took a Raspberry Pi, a little tiny computer, and built a case that looks exactly like the control panel from the mini computer from the 70s. But it runs all the software and basically is equal to that old machine. So it's just for fun and playing, and code, and just try to solve. Gee, I wonder if you could do that this way, kinds of things. I promise my team, and I keep the promise. I do not check in code to any of the main products. So I may look at what we're writing, but I don't contribute code to it.
So I have like just a couple more questions before we wrap up. I want
Yeah.
to move us back to technology and
Hmm.
one of the other talking points that you mentioned, which is recognizing patterns in technology and product lifecycle. And you said that timing is second only to creativity and quality of what you build. Can you
Yep.
expand on that statement?
So you may have the greatest idea in the world about something, and in all fullness of time, it's proven correct. But if you don't get the timing right, it's not gonna catch. Electric cars or graphical interfaces or the internet or so many things that were just too early to their time window. So that's timing is a fundamental baseline, but creativity can trump that in many cases, right? It can pull that window forward, right? Whereas maybe the global, societal, economic, et cetera, conditions make such and such a product a no-brainer and just like obvious, and anybody will succeed with it. But at the same time, is if you approach something with creativity, you can usually pull that window forward or shorten it forward, and you don't get a month or two of first mover advantage. You get maybe a 2 3 years of first mover advantage, and just by being creative about it. And I think there are a few products in history that have managed to do that, but they all come from amazingly creative bents and starting points. The poster child to me is the iPhone, right? The iPhone was it was going to happen. Processors are getting smaller, screens were getting better, but to do it, as early as that team did it was really something special, and took humongous creativity to pull it off.
Where in your career have you seen that example, or where in your career have timing been right and where timing has been wrong?
Oh, timing off is so the original days. Back up. Where in my career have I seen timing be off? I'll go to an Apple example. So I was at Apple in the 90s and aughts and up through 2011. And I was part of what everybody knows now as iCloud, but it had different product names before that. And we, as a team, we had the idea of like server to computer or having the internet directly integrated into the operating system and et cetera, and doing things for you way, way, way early. And it was successful within its own little community, but it didn't take off and change the entire industry forward the way it has now. Like, I can't think of an application or a computer or a platform today that doesn't have the internet at its core. And that was something we were just a little early on pulling that one off, but the team really has driven it forward successfully now, and that's just awesome.
What is that like having a product that you had originally worked on that's now like almost, I mean, not, I don't want to say almost everyone's using it, but it's so ubiquitous in the world. What is that feeling like?
Look, the for that I have to go to WhatsApp. I mean, where else do you get to affect billions? I mean, literally billions of users. And for many people, certainly in emerging markets, WhatsApp is the internet to them. I mean, that is their experience. And the ability that you make the smallest change, the smallest little incremental change, and maybe you upset uh, 0.5%, only 4 or 5 million people, but you delight 10%, hundreds of millions of people. That's just it's really interesting to think about, 2 lines of code making the experience for hundreds of millions of people better. And it's a very weighty responsibility to think about that, and to make sure you do it right and you're very careful. Also very very heady, just a very like, okay, wow.
And have you ever had to, just in that particular example, like, was there a hypothesis, going back to hypotheses, like
Yeah,
where, because it impacts so many people, you're like, you just kind of question, like, is this the right decision? Um,
almost all of them, I think. are we are we gonna black out so and so's person, you know ability to communicate with their family because we made a small choice or a small tweak.
Yeah.
It's the care that the team spends on those thoughts and those decisions is, I respect it greatly because it's just really, really difficult.
I mean, I can only imagine how stressful that is because, who you're taking accountability at every level of the company if in case something doesn't work. Yeah, I can't imagine how stressful that is.
It's great responsibility is, it's back to our goal conversation, right? If someone says, I want to be responsible for this and drive this thing forward, very often I think you find when they get there, if they get there, they find out, oh, this isn't what I wanted. It's not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's much better that you wind up there learning the lessons and not having sought the destination because you realize it's just part of the journey and it makes it so you can manage the stress. But yeah,
Mm.
that I can assure you there's some amazing coworkers I had at WhatsApp that I know care very, very, very deeply about that.
Yeah. What you just mentioned, that basically feels like my whole entrepreneurial journey. It's like, oh, I want to work for myself and I want to build this great company. And I had no idea the journey I was about to embark on. Had I known, I would have never signed up for this.
Be careful
Yeah.
what you ask for. You may get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. And I always get everything I want. But when you get it, you're like, oh man, that's not how I pictured it.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Goals, no plan survives first contact with the compiler, right? Nothing that you end with is what you sought out to start with. Because life and the world and everything gets into play and you can think of a better way to do it, particularly in technology, right? The minute you've thought of something and done it, you immediately think of the way you can do it better.
Yeah. So what aspect of your life are you thinking that you can do better?
Oh, uh, well, from the personal side of my life work balance would be one. It's really hard when your work is your life and your life is your work and they blend together. And they've done that for so long because that's how you grew up, right? Technology was part of my childhood. And so it's just naturally part of everything I do. So I could always get better at that. I'm not great at it. And that's something I work on. But and my those that are close to me try to keep me honest and keep me on task. And professionally, I think the biggest thing there is I also suffer. I have big ideas, and hey, we can go solve this, or we should try that, or etc. And continuing to focus on being crisp about this is a direction we should be going in versus hey, this is a wild harebrained idea. Maybe we should think about this, but don't go do it yet because it's not at all thought out. I do bring an energy and an intensity, and sometimes the line between hey, we should go do and this is just a wild ass guess gets blurred.
Is that is that you being the hippo? It was the first time I heard the term hippo, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Throwing it back at you.
Yeah, I don't take credit for that. That's some folks at Netflix is where I first heard it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. I worry about the hippo. I worry about the hippo.
Mm. So my last question to that is like, how do you communicate like, hey, this is kind of like a direction that we would go versus like, here's a wild idea that we need to go implement.
Mm-hmm. I try to bracket that phrase with this is an opinion, saying that was an opinion, so that it's clear that I'm just stating an opinion, or hey, making this up thing, and then made that up, so that it's really clear to try to say that what I was just saying, I don't know, I think
Yeah.
maybe we should talk about it.
Gotcha.
Tell me why I'm wrong. And that's what I love about the teams, all the teams I've gotten to work with, and especially flows. Everybody's very comfortable saying, that's wrong. And we usually get much better results that way.
I think that's a great approach to it. Just here's an idea, tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you got to recognize that multiple minds make for light work. Multiple people all truly rowing in the same direction, trying to win, will almost universally produce something better than an individual can, with a couple exceptions, like the complete, out of left field, brilliant idea that no one's seen before.
Yeah.
Those are very individualistic, and you got to recognize them and honor them and nurture them when you find them, and they're hard to find and identify. But at the same time is, when people are collaborative and transparent and trust centric, at least it's much easier to do that. Hey, that's wrong, or I trust you really invested in this, but I don't understand this, or teach me that, or help me learn how you got here, because I'm just missing something. As instead of, well, that's just wrong, and I'm the senior Uber director, third class of thing, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Absolutely. Collaboration. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So Scott, my last question to you is, as a technologist, I'm always curious about what your vision for the future is.
I think it's going to look. I've been very fortunate. I've been participating in a couple of the major patterns in technology, microprocessors and microcomputers, graphical interfaces and computers becoming easier, the internet, mobile computing. I think we're really on a cusp of another one, which is AI. And, it's got all the hype and the way over promises and under delivers. And, and at the same time, the really scary things. And, I remember when people used to be scared of word processors because, the computer's writing your paper for you. You can't use a word processor. I actually had to deal with that in school. And I think AI is going to go through some of that, but it's going to go through it at a pace we've never seen. Whereas all the transitions I've been part of and I talked about, took decades or many, many years. I think AI is going to do it in probably a third of the time or half of the time. And it's going to be a wild, very interesting ride as we go through this. And in 5 years, 10 years, we're going to be in I think I'm going to be always kind of an optimist. We're going to be in a very good place where there's going to be a lot of, as a society, problems we solved and things we can do that we just couldn't do before. And, I'm hopeful that, as a planet, we'll be better for it.
So if you had to bet your money on a specific kind of AI, what would it be?
Oh. So the generational stuff is obviously the most interesting. Because that's where I think we're going to get to AGI, or we're going to get closest to AGI first. And, I don't think we have AGI yet. I don't think any one of the models or approaches we have today, from everything I've learned and can learn, is at AGI. But I do think the generationals, large language, image gen, video gen, audio gen, stuff that, makes something based on training and make something based on training and experience and has emergent behavior, are going to be the ones that are going to get us there. And it's going to be some kind of fusion model. So I think OpenAI has the best generational stuff going. And I think Google might have this, depending on how you look at it, Google might have some of the best fusion stuff. And so it's going to be interesting to see those two and any other dark horses to get into the race kind of come together. But when we get to AGI, that's when it gets interesting.
And how are you using AI in your everyday life, whether it's personal or for professional?
I use it a couple ways. I use it as a coding assistant. It's great just to generate out boilerplate code and stuff that, you could write, but it just takes time. And why? Let it do it. I also use it for writing refinement. So, hey, do a tone analysis. Does this land this way? Am I saying this in a way that, otherwise? And it's suggestions. I never use its output directly, but I always listen to its suggestions like I would a trusted editor, kind of sitting on my shoulder. I use it that way. And then for information space exploring, I think the stuff that OpenAI has done with the latest version of GPT is pretty interesting. I think when the assistants catch up and start fusing in some of that, that's when it's going to get really interesting for information and subject exploration and learning in general. The last thing I'll say in AI is I worry a lot about education. I worry a lot about education and AI. Education has always struggled with technology and struggled with technology adoption and responding to trends that happen, whether they want them to or not. And I think AI has amazing potential to be beneficial for education as an augment to teachers and as a way of helping them scale and be better and learn more. But it's going to require fundamentally changing a bunch of things that systemically we have changed in 100 years. And I worry a lot.
Yeah, of course. And it's going back to culture, right? You don't really ever have educational systems where there's a culture of innovation and uh, efficiency in like how they're teaching new information to
I,
students.
I do. I think you had some of that in fringes or in isolated pockets. It's systemically that's very difficult,
Yeah.
at least historically speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. The longer I live in my adult life, I'm like, man, like what the hell did they teach us in school? Like they certainly didn't teach us how to do taxes. They certainly didn't teach us about, interpersonal connection and, the really important like adult things that I'm now learning in my 30s. And I'm like, man, like I don't get it. I like sometimes I feel like a kid and they should have
Yeah,
taught these at school.
yeah. I mean, look, we can get into hours in education. I would love an education system that is fosters a sense of curiosity and lifelong learning and focuses on giving you the skills to achieve that as opposed to something that is highly regimented and highly structured. Because and I'm not faulting it, there are real valid reasons why it's like this. It's I do not wish to oversimplify it. If they only did this, it's not like that at all. But I do think that I really hope that AI and the wave of technology can then alongside an AI based can do some fundamental good there. Like, I think it can. I believe it can.
Do you think AI would replace formal education?
I hope not. Just because there's such a human. I mean, look, we're not going to interact with AI as at the level of community and human that we get. At least not in my lifetime. And so, I don't think AI should replace that, but I do think it has an augmentation capacity. It has the ability to be that backstop. What I've really benefited tremendously from it is that, hey, there is thing going on. There's some new scientific thing, or there's some new medical thing, or there's some new thing that in an area I have no doubt, just absolutely no doubt. And I have found it to be a really powerful tool to go gain context and depth and learn about that topic much faster than I've ever been able to do prior to its existence. But I do so with the grain of salt that, it is wrong. It does hallucinate. It does make things up. So it's not canon, but it can usually point me in really interesting directions. And then when I find a really interesting direction, I go Google it and I go look at something that I know isn't subject to hallucination. Well, beyond a human level, isn't subject to hallucination.
Awesome. Well, those are all my questions, Scott. Was there any other topic that you wish we had covered that we didn't talk about today?
Hopefully, if somebody young listens to this, they can stop focusing on the paycheck or the next rung or the whatever and focus on hey, go love what I'm doing today. The rest of it really all will work out. Won't be easy, but it'll work out.
Yeah, it's like staying present, like love what you do versus saying I'm going to be happy and I'm going to love what I do in the future, because the future doesn't really exist. You're just in this continuous, journey in the present moment.
Yeah. Anybody, I believe in some tech, right? Anybody who tells you this is what technology is going to be in 2 years is lying to you, either honestly or dishonestly, right? They're lying because they really believe it. That's fine. Or even dishonestly because they're just making it up because it serves some internal benefit. It's moving too fast. We just don't know.